Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, good afternoon. I'm thrilled to welcome you to this World Forest Week side event that we've been waiting for all week, focused on integrated fire management. My name is Amy Duchel. I'm a senior forestry officer and team leader of the Forest and Climate team here at FAO, and it's my privilege to moderate today's event. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers and 2 panels, but before we get started, I would like to turn the mic over to our Deputy Director of the Forestry Division, Tina Vahanen, who will provide some opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Amy. Distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, colleagues and friends, and my fellow panelists here and speakers. Welcome to this World Forestry Week Fire Hub event. This is to help bring together the global fire community. I would like to thank the many co-organizers of this event who are displayed on the screen. My PowerPoint is not apparently yet there. Okay, can we have the PowerPoint? All right, so now you can see the co-organizers on the screen.
They started in the middle. Let me just go back. This is strange. Okay. There we go. Now we start over.
Now we start over, and now we see the co-organizers on the screen. So apologies, it was starting from the last slide when they put it on, but now we go. Okay, so as you well know, the statistics on fire, every year from 340 to 370 million hectares of the Earth's land surface are affected by fires. And as you even more well know, with the ongoing challenges posed by climate change and land use change, extreme wildfires are become more frequent and severe, posing increasing threats both to human and environmental health. So how we respond to the wildfire challenges is really crucial. We really have to think a paradigm shift here. We must shift our focus from reactive responses to proactive strategies. We need to prioritize prevention and preparedness through integrated fire management, an approach that encompasses actions before, during, and after fires. So we need to implement integrated fire management globally to reduce the negative impacts of wildfires on people, landscapes, and the global climate. And this is the very mission of the Global Fire Management Hub, and the reason we are gathered here. We need the united international community behind this fire hub. And the Global Fire Management Hub was launched by FAO and UNEP during the 8th International Wildfire Conference in Portugal in 2023. This collective initiative of key global and regional organizations and entities serves as one-stop shop for data, guidelines, best practices, expertise, and e-learning. So it's a collective of different networks that work in different regions, but it also will be and is going to be a web platform that has a one-stop shop for all the data and knowledge you need to know about the fire, how to manage fire, and and to share also the technical expertise and data. So the Fire Management Hub goals is to strengthen country capacity to put integrated fire management into practice with the aim of reducing the many negative impacts on wildfires have on people, landscapes and the global climate. The hub has 5 pillars. First, enhance knowledge sharing. Second, strengthen capacity building. Third, support wildfire resilient communities. Fourth, improve fire risk assessment and early warning. And fifth, offer policy support. Thanks to the initial backing and funding from the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture, FAO conducted a series of technical workshops to operationalize the Fire Hub. This included starting to integrate the long-standing Global Fire Monitoring Center and its regional networks and centers into the Fire Hub, and connecting the Landscape Fire Governance Framework, which was also launched last year. This progress of establishing the Fire Hub has been greatly supported by many partners. And we would like to, from FAO's side, extend our sincere gratitude not only to Germany, but to Korea Forest Service through the AFFIRM mechanism, Canada's Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, France, Minister of Agriculture, and Portugal's Agency for Integrated Rural Fire Management for their contributions. Also, our thanks to US Forest Service and the US States Agency for International Development, with whom we have developed forthcoming agreements. It has been rewarding to receive such positive feedback from members of COFO on the Fire Hub before and during COFO, and we are now forging ahead with our work. On that note, it's my pleasure to share with you the first Fire Hub's knowledge product. It was much needed update of the FAO's voluntary guidelines on integrated fire management. Since the initial publication in 2006, many countries have used these guidelines to develop public policies and training programs. With the release of this second edition, which includes new content to reflect the evolving science and practice of integrated fire management, even more countries are expected to refer to this important resource. Developing these guidelines has truly been a group effort with contributions from numerous experts and partner organizations, and these experts include also country experts. This process perfectly highlights the collaborative spirit of the Fire Hub. So, colleagues, I want to really express my gratitude for all the partners, all the co-organizers, all the donors, and all the countries and technical experts that have already been part of the establishing and making the Fire Hub operational. So really, my big thanks to all of you, and back to Amy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina, for those opening remarks. And we will now hear from some of these key supporters of the Global Fire Management Hub, who will share their experiences on integrated fire management. And I do want to say that this event is being live streamed, it's being recorded, so you can share it afterwards, and there's interpretation in the 6 UN languages as well, and Portuguese to English and back for our speaker from Brazil. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Ms. Monique Frison, the Director General of Trade, Economics, and the Industry Branch of Natural Resources Canada. We asked Ms. Frison to open this discussion, one, because Canada has been an enthusiastic supporter of the Fire Hub since we began this journey, but also because of the unfortunate events that Canada has suffered in terms of wildfires and the context that we're living in now that really highlights the urgency of this issue. Over to you, Ms. Frison.
Thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk to all of you today. I want to thank Tina and Amy and the Fire Hub Secretariat at the FAO for their hard work in making the event happen. Last year's record-breaking fire season in Canada saw unprecedented international support, and many of the countries who assisted us are here in the room today and indeed are on the panel today. And we are very much deeply grateful for all of the assistance that we received. While we have all been at COFO this week, a fast and large fire has been burning in and around Canada's national park in Jasper, Alberta, part of the Rocky Mountain Range in Western Canada. I understand that among those fighting the blaze are firefighters from both the US and Australia. The town of Jasper was devastated this last week with over 25,000 people being evacuated. And while we don't yet know the extent of the damage, it looks like much of the town has been destroyed. So many of those evacuated will not have a home to go back to. It seems that this fire too is so especially hot and fast that it will take some time to know its full impact. I also have heard from home that we have firefighters over the next few days coming in from Mexico, South Africa, New Zealand, and even more from Australia to assist with fires in the Canadian provinces of Alberta and British Columbia. And again, to express our gratitude. For Canada, then, you will understand why we see the Fire Hub as an important initiative, one that is key to advancing global action on fire. With the Fire Hub, we want to work with partners to strengthen integrated fire management, including prevention and mitigation, interoperability and training for fire agencies, as well as restoration post-fire. In Canada, we are working to adapt our approach to wildfire management to reflect the new reality posed by climate change and a warmer and drier forest and planet. That includes, among other things, recognizing the contribution that Canada's Indigenous peoples can bring, given, of course, their millennia of science and knowledge of fire, particularly in the boreal forest. I wanted to highlight two initiatives in particular. The first is the Reciprocity, Ecology, and Diversity in Fire Lab, or for short, the Red Fire Lab. This is a virtual lab space, a center of expertise, specializing in Indigenous fire stewardship and research, guided by Indigenous advisors who are themselves specialists in Indigenous fire practices, including cultural burning. The second initiative is aimed at improving and supporting resilience in communities. A working group of Indigenous leaders and experts who have named themselves the Thunderbird Collective will seek to improve forest and fire management on traditional lands. It will advocate for Indigenous involvement and leadership in wildfire management, prevention, and mitigation activities. Together, these initiatives will help all of us in Canada to benefit from the deep knowledge of Canadian forests of our Indigenous peoples. The events this week in Canada are devastating. We know that fire will continue to be a challenge for our forests and for our people and for our planet. Canada very much appreciates the attention the FAO has brought to this important topic and for the need to adopt better, more integrated, more inclusive approaches to landscape management in order to reduce the impacts of fire. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from the other of my very esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique. I would now like to go back a bit to the origins of the Fire Hub, which actually started at the World Forestry Congress way back in 2022 in Seoul, South Korea. And we are pleased to have Mr. Song In-nam, Director General, International Affairs Bureau of the Korea Forest Service. And I say that the start was there because when Mr. Nam was actually seconded to FAO for a period, he had a vision of a mechanism that was the AFFIRM mechanism, assuring the future of forests through integrated risk management. And that really was the seed of the Global Fire Management Hub, and that we launched in Seoul in 2022. And so we consider the Republic of Korea as really an early mover and an early supporter of the Fire Hub. So over to you, Mr. Nam.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for the introduction of me. It's too great, flattering. And also, it's my pleasure to share my view on Global Fire Harbor to communicate colleagues working in forest and disaster risk management here alone and virtually. Accelerating forest fire disaster due to climate change is a global challenge, and the Republic of Korea is no exception. I will introduce Korea's conditions and policy of forest fires and hopes for development on the Global Fire Hub. Okay. Like other countries, forest fire in Korea is one of the most influential issues on the climate crisis. The occurrence and damaged area of forest fire in the 2020s has increased by 34% and by 270% respectively, compared to the average of the past 50 years. Most fire causes are man-made from November through May in dry season. Korea has a high population density, which means major facilities such as residential buildings, power plants, and cultural assets are in close proximity to forests. Accordingly, forest fire management in Korea goes beyond forest protection and is perceived as a matter of national security because it is interconnected to the lives and safety of our citizens. Korea has been developed a real-time integrated fire management system with internet and smart technology based on relevant information such as weather, geography, forest, and social economic sectors. It includes the entire fire management processes covering forecasting fire risk, monitoring, reporting, fire spread prediction, and resource mobilization. The ROK carries out strong preventive measures. We collect and grind agriculture by production in area adjacent to forest to prevent the burning from farmers. We also limit entry into forest that are typical to manage fire during fire seasons. The Korea Forest Service operates an integrated incident command system at the forefront to coordinate and collaborate with all relevant resources, including forest firefighters, building firefighters, soldiers, police, civil officials, and even civilians. The incident commander allocates firefighting resources based on real-time fire imagery transferred from helicopters and drones at night, and the fire spread predicting system. Korea has rapidly developed from agriculture and a rural-based country into urbanized and industrialized nation, experiencing various stages of socio-economic conditions and forest environment, enabling us to share a wide range of perspectives of both developing and developed countries. For example, until the 1990s, Korea mainly focused on construction of fire lines with handy tools. And since the 2010s, have developed an integrated command system utilizing internet and smart mobile technology and strengthened aerial fighting with helicopters. To share this experience with other countries, the Republic of Korea launched the APAM mechanism in collaboration with the FAO. I had the honor of being involved in developing the APAM. I hope that the Global Fire Hub will become a one-stop shop that provides optimal solutions to fit diverse conditions of different countries. Additionally, the hub will significantly contribute to raising awareness on effective and efficient roles and knowledge of forest management in integrated fire management. I also hope that Hub's resources can be scaled up, more funds from diverse donors, and be developed step by step, covering other disaster risks originating within and from forests, such as landslide and forest pest and disease. As the first partner to fund global forest disaster risk management, the Republic of Korea will continue on the journey to create a world safe from the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nam. We will now turn our attention over to Germany and Ms. Katalin Scheumoshi, who's Senior Advisor of the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture of Germany. And as all of us know, Germany has a long history of support for integrated fire management, including through the Global Fire Monitoring Center, which we'll hear about more today. And Germany's contribution to the hub, as Tina mentioned in the opening remarks, really allowed us to convene partners over the past year to discuss a collective vision for the Fire Hub. And we rarely have that kind of opportunity. And I can't stress how valuable that has been to get us to where we are now, where we consider that we're now operational. But it took that kind of collective effort. So over to you, Ms. Scheumoshi.
Thank you very much. Dear Deputy Director, dear Senator, dear colleagues, I thank FAO for convening and hosting this side event and the co-organizers for their support. I'm honored to be part of this distinguished panel to further discuss and welcome the FAO Global Fire Hub. As you might not be aware of, in Germany, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, my ministry, includes the forestry sector, and we are formally the head of the German Forest Administration Network. As you know, Germany, as a host of the already mentioned Global Fire Monitoring Center, the GFMC, in Freiburg, since 1998 has been supporting global and regional efforts in fire risk prevention, firefighting, fire management, and cross-border support for more than 20 years now. I myself was a forestry student in Freiburg during the early days of the GFMC, learning from Professor Goldammer, and wildfire management seemed to me, in my limited experience back then, a niche topic in Germany, to be honest with you. As you probably know, that is not anymore the case. Globally, the risk of landscape fires and fire impacts are increasing due to climate change and all the other reasons we have heard from my colleagues. And Germany is not an exception. The city of Berlin, for example, where I live, is surrounded by one of the most wildfire-prone regions within Germany, with the name of Brandenburg, which is additionally burdened with an exceptionally high amount of unexploded ordnance from the years of military activity in the area. So I am thankful, actually, that I have had forward-looking predecessors who 20 years ago already started to provide seed funding to establish important structures in wildfire management. Thanks to this pioneering work, Germany has been an active member of the global fire community, which we are here to connect today, as a developer of expertise, supporter, and donor for various regional wildfire management mechanisms, capacity building programs, and activities in the wider sense. Therefore, Germany very much welcomes and has actively supported the establishment of the Global Fire Hub. It is the consequential next step after decades of engagement of so many institutions and colleagues who are already also here present today. To end, I would like to thank FAO for the update given during COFO, summarizing the recent technical workshops and recommendations that came out of them for the future work of the Fire Hub. I am really looking forward to hear more from my co-panelists and experts today about the latest social and technological innovations in integrated fire management that we can learn from. And let me express both my hope and expectation that the integration of the already existing regional networks and the experience of the regional fire monitoring and fire management resource centers will be able to serve the FAO Fire Hub and at the same time benefit from the expected international support that will hopefully continue to the Fire Hub. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katalin. We now will have an online speaker. I hope that Mr. Tiago Oliveira is with us online. Maybe Tiago, you could just say hello.
Hello.
Okay, very good. Tiago is chairman of the board of directors of the Agency for Integrated Rural Fire Management of Portugal. And when the Fire Hub was launched last year at the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference, which was hosted by Portugal, this was also the emergence of the landscape fire governance framework, which sets out a really important set of principles that are important for integrated fire management. And so very immediately we knew that this all needed to be connected in the context of the Fire Hub. And so Mr. Oliveira has been part of the technical workshops over the past year, bringing his insights and expertise, and we look forward to hearing from you today. We may need to move the slides for you, so just please say next.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and all the other persons around this event that we are very honored to participate. And it was quite relevant after the 2017 fire events we had that the volunteer fire guidelines 2006 version were available. But those strategical guidelines and procedures were available and were quite useful, but they are easily operated under a single linear and trivial and traditional top-down, well-run organization. If I own a country, if I own all the behaviors of all actors, it will be quite easy to implement these technological fixes with a step forward approach as the volunteer fire guidelines of integrated fire management presented. But we understood when reacting to the fire events in Portugal that was mostly about bridging the gaps between the technical aspects and the political environment that crowd out after the fire. So governance is key. That's why we are putting this governance approach forward. Please, slides. Well, what do you know? We know that governments are under pressure as the fire losses increase, both in the wildland-urban interface and also as water, forestry, biodiversity, scarcity brings in and claims the need to protect those forests. But this brings ambivalence because protection of lives and protection of trees, there's sometimes are orthogonal objectives. But also we do know that simple solution, quick fixes, and only supporting fire suppression will not solve the problem. They are tackling the consequences, but they are not solving the causes. And today, complexity of fire falls on multiple agencies with diverse operating scales, priorities, and goals. And quoting Steve Pine, fire is the synthesis of the contexts. And the context is made of a lot of active behaviors that change land use, land cover, and the socio-ecological system makes all the claims and drive the change. So we need to agree that facts and evidence do not necessarily conquer over beliefs and perceptions and political agendas. And knowing this, what we need is to reach out and agree and move on the policymakers and world leaders to have a clear and coherent language. We must reach out and opening channels with other areas of knowledge. It's not a civil protection niche or a forest management niche. We should move towards a polycentric governance systems that assure that on the long run, the things are done with the guidelines and the proper procedures. Slide, please. So we look on this Fire Hub initiative as an opportunity to nudge the politicians towards a better wildland fire policy. We need to promote further political engagements. We need to establish a platform for international interagency dialogue to share resources, as no single nation has all the capabilities to tackle the problem or the causes of that problem. And we need to promote a broader stakeholders engagements. We have the guidelines, we have the technology and technique expertise, but we need to get political. Fires have come more than technical. It's a social problem nowadays, and we have solutions that need to be delivered and implemented with the right and adequate political support, regardless of the political culture, regardless of the rulings of power, regardless of the asymmetric political agendas or the asymmetric stakeholders' power. Slide, please. So it's key for us to speak about governance, and we need to agree on common principles and goals. We need to speak and decide together to budget priorities, science and evidence-based solution, and also strengthen international cooperation. Different agencies, different ministries need to come together and agree on a common future, because sometimes different agendas pop in, complexity and ambivalence, as I told you, emerge, and we need to keep the steering and heading towards the tackling the causes of the problem. So the landscape fire governance that we agree on the 8th International Wildland Fire address all of these issues on the broader integrated language, closing the gaps between fire management or forest management, if it's including the fire issue, and the civil protection that are competing for the solutions, and the infrastructure and all these belongings that people do care. So it's entirely in line with integrated fire management guidelines and Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction, and also in line with risk governance framework. So slide, please. To conclude, it is important to understand that the landscape fire governance, it's possible and it's completely in line with the 5R initiatives in the integrated fire management. So we have the planning, the preparation, the prevention, the pre-suppression, the suppression, and the recovery. The framework is a whole of society and a whole of government value chain that is being promoted and fully compatible with the traditional 5Rs. We also provided a checklist that we want to unfold in the coming months in order to allow for each nation or regions to understand what is the level of the best governance that has in place in order to put the integrated fire management on operational scale. Well, concluding, thank you for this opportunity, and hope that the future will have severe fires ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Thiago, and thank you for showing the 5Rs. While they're on the screen, I mean, you know, what I've learned in my education from my colleagues, the real experts, you know, what 90% or more of the resources and attention are on this suppression. And really the aim of the hub is to shift that focus to the preventative stages. And I think we always said at the beginning of the Fire Hub, address wildfires before they begin. That's when wildfires should be addressed. And then the importance of post-fire recovery, including through ecosystem restoration. So with that, I will move on to our next speaker, our distinguished representative from the Chief of the U.S. Forest Service, Chief Randy Moore, who, if you've been at COFO this week, you probably know him pretty well because we've kept him very busy. He's been moderating, he's been speaking, he's been sharing the unique both domestic and international experience that the U.S. Forest Service has to offer. So over to you, Chief. We look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope what you hear is that we have a significant issue that didn't just start brewing, but it's been brewing. But I want to talk about, just in recent years, our colleagues from Portugal and Canada has mentioned that these things are also occurring in Chile, Greece, the US, and many other countries that have not been mentioned. But it's a global issue, and it's reached a global crisis in terms of its proportion. We're facing similar challenges in how we prevent, plan for, and respond to wildfires. And to address this, the United States was one of many countries who participated in the development of a landscape fire governance framework, which is a guiding document for all countries that face wildfires. In 2022, the United States began implementing a wildfire crisis strategy. And our goal mirrors the expected outcomes found in the framework and how we plan to accomplish this work in parallel to the key principles in the framework. And a key factor that we have moved past is that silo mindset, which focuses on wildfire suppression only. Now, the focus is on large-scale prevention and mitigation measures. Bigger fires require bigger landscape areas. Our thinking and what we've identified in terms of addressing this issue at that landscape scale, we've identified 250 high-risk fire sheds in the U.S. And just for context and reference, a fire shed is a large area where social and ecological concerns about wildfire combine and intertwine. By targeting specific landscapes and working with partners to set common goals, strategic field management projects are reducing wildfire impacts not only on homes and communities, but also on air quality, municipal watersheds, and wildlife habitat and other values at risk. We now have a strategy for better defining where and how to place treatments on the landscapes within a time frame that will truly make a difference for the communities that are most at risk. And what you'll see primarily is that we are transitioning into a new way on how we approach wildfire prevention, but also how do we treat wildfire suppression. And we have to look at it in more broader terms. To give you an example, in the past, it was really about how many acres can you suppress fire on, and how many acres can you treat. That approach we're finding has been really outdated. It's now, how will you protect communities, and how will you protect the critical infrastructure that these communities depend on? In order to do that, you're not looking so much at the economical way of treating landscape. You're looking at the value of those areas that you're treating. And to mention earlier, one example would be that, and the wildfire crisis strategy has given us this opportunity. But when we looked at developing a strategy to really combat wildfire management, we looked at what's at risk. And as I look across the 21 landscapes that we've had in this strategy, what's at risk is $800 billion worth of value. What we are spending is only about $3 billion to protect $800 billion of value on an annual basis. And what we're looking at is trying to have a different conversation to decision makers and people with influence, because they have to connect to what we're trying to achieve, because a lot of times that's where the support is at. And if we can't communicate and talk in ways that resonate with what's important to them, we're going to continue to fight a losing battle as we look at trying to improve the environment, which we have a responsibility in. We've seen many times the whole communities have burned down. We've seen the Paradise Fire as an example in Northern California, where 86 people died. I know some of you have seen incidents like that as well. So it is imperative on us not to continue the way we've done our work in the past 100 years, but look at where we are now and look over the next 100 years, how should we be looking at transitioning? And transitioning is not easy, because when you look at the infrastructure that currently exists, it's based on the last 100 years. When you look at the next 100 years in front of us, we have to have an industry that looks beyond where we are. For instance, wood innovations. What are those innovations around wood now? Because of different reasons, we need to look at biochar, We need to look at perhaps cap and trade system, looking at carbon sequestration and how do we take advantage of that. We need to be looking into the future. And I think a lot of what we're trying to achieve now in this Fire Hub really helps us to organize in a way to address these really significant issues. And as we've heard from other speakers today, the aim of the Fire Hub is to strengthen countries' capacity to implement an integrated fire management approach with the many negative effects on wildfire, the people, the landscape, and the global climate. It's my belief that the Fire Hub will support the implementation of the Landscape Fire Governance Framework that was launched at the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference, and options for advocated and included in the Integrated Wildfire International Forest-Related Dialogue. The United States has committed to supporting the Landscape Fire Governance Framework and the UN Global Fire Management Hub because we know it's the right thing to do for our country, but also for our planet. Wildfire and wildfire smoke cross international boundaries. This threatens the ability of forests to store carbon, combat climate change, and it impacts the health of humans regardless of nationality. Working together, these same principles, countries around the world can greatly reduce the risk and impacts of wildland fire. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Chief. So we'll move over to another U.S. agency, a different one, and in fact, a new partner for the Forestry Division here at FAO. I'd like to introduce Ms. Stephanie Savolain, Director of the Office of Field and Response Operations of the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance of USAID. And while there's been a long-standing relationship between FAO more broadly and this bureau, this is a new interaction that we've had in the context of the Fire Hub and the humanitarian issues associated with wildfires. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you all to my distinguished colleagues here and panelists and to all who have joined today. I'm very happy to be here and to share that the U.S. Agency for International Development's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, our first and foremost interest is international humanitarian response. Our focus is on saving lives, alleviating human suffering, and reducing the economic impact of disasters worldwide. In addition, we found, both in the United States and in the countries where we work around the world, that reducing risks and building resilience directly contribute to a country's ability to recover quickly from disasters. 4 years ago, BHA, the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, developed a strategic framework outlining our approach to programming in areas of early recovery, risk reduction, and resilience, or as we call it, ER4. In light of that strategy and our strong belief in this work, I'm delighted to join you today to support the rollout of the Global Fire Management Hub, which in our view is a new institution that encompasses all of those approaches. As the administrator of USAID, Samantha Power, noted in a recent address, speaking about natural disasters globally in the era of climate change, she said, superlatives like hottest, costliest, and deadliest no longer elicit surprise. And this is particularly true for wildfire disasters. Catastrophic wildfire events are both a driver of climate change and are also occurring more frequently and more severely, in part because of climate change. With catastrophic wildfires dominating the news cycle in Chile, in Hawaii, Portugal, Greece, California, Algeria, and many others that have been mentioned today, our community's longstanding focus on fire suppression really needs to shift and to open. We need a more holistic approach to wildfire and an integrated approach to fire management, encompassing preparedness and resiliency, smoke management, and post-wildfire hazard mitigation. And of course, knowing that over 90% of wildfires globally are human-caused and can be prevented, we need to invest in socioeconomic measures aimed at prevention. As we know from experience, wildfires have many devastating humanitarian impacts, and the most significant impacts that affect the most people are not the flames themselves, but rather the impacts of long-term exposure to acrid smoke on particularly vulnerable people, like the elderly, expecting mothers, and young children. The significant release of carbon into the atmosphere, once sequestered for millions of years, now making global weather patterns more volatile and extreme. And the torrential rain-induced post-wildfire landslides that bury towns that sometimes have just narrowly escaped wildfires in recent weeks. These impacts are often less visible, but have tremendous human consequences. This is why USAID is focused on building resilience against the impacts of climate change and promoting climate-positive investments. Today, I'm proud to announce that USAID is providing $500,000 to FAO this year in support of one such climate-focused investment with direct links to humanitarian needs. These funds will allow the Global Fire Management Hub to continue to develop into a focal point for knowledge sharing, capacity building, and equitable and diverse wildfire resilient communities. This work will incorporate Indigenous peoples' knowledge, focus on anticipatory action and early warning, and provide policy support, prevention, preparedness, response, smoke management, and post-wildfire challenges. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. We look forward to our deepening relationship with FAO's Forestry Division as we work together to make a positive difference in the lives of those affected by wildfire.
It's us who thank you and USAID for this important contribution. So really, deepest thanks, and we really look forward to working more closely with you on the Fire Hub. So last but not least, we have a special panelist who's coming from Brazil, Brazilian Senator Nelsinho Trad, who's also the chair of the Amazonian Parliament, Parlamas. And he's here today to give his perspective on integrated fire management, which we know Brazil is a leader on. And so we look forward to hearing from Senator Trad. Senator Trad will be speaking in Portuguese, and I believe the translation into English is on channel 7, and then the other languages. For those who are online, if you haven't used interpretation yet, it's on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and you select the interpretation that you need. So Senator Trad, over to you, and you should have the clicker to be able to move the slides at your pace. Thank you.
Muito bom dia a todos e a todas. É prazer e uma alegria muito grande poder estar participando nessa manhã, tarde de trabalho. Gostaria de agradecer a doutora Amy Duchelle, que de uma maneira brilhante conduz a moderação dessa mesa, e ao meu lado aqui a ministra Kathleen Solimose, a quem, no seu nome e da embaixadora Carla Barroso, gostaria de cumprimentar a todas as mulheres aqui presentes. Diferente dos meus interlocutores dessa mesa, eu não sou um especialista do tema. Eu sou médico, cirurgião geral e urologista. E estou senador da República pelo Brasil, representando o estado do Mato Grosso do Sul, além de ser presidente do Parlamas, Parlamento Amazônico, que compõe parlamentares, senadores e deputados dos países que têm território amazônico. Ao todo são 8 países: Brasil, Bolívia, Equador, Colômbia, Venezuela, Suriname, Guiana, fazendo com que essa interlocução possa trazer uma narrativa verdadeira dos problemas que ocorrem na Amazônia e, mais do que isso, apontar as soluções. Eu venho lá do Mato Grosso do Sul, no centro-oeste brasileiro. Aqui está uma foto que mostra a localidade de onde venho e onde está o Pantanal, que é considerado a maior planície de inundação contínua do mundo, com 140 mil quilômetros quadrados em território brasileiro. A maior parte no nosso estado, do Mato Grosso do Sul, 60% está no Mato Grosso do Sul. Os 44 mil quilômetros quadrados restantes estão divididos entre a Bolívia e o Paraguai. Essa é uma imagem que demonstra o que nós estamos passando nesse momento no Pantanal brasileiro. Aqui nós temos uma imagem que mostra a evolução da redução. Não.
If we could get the slides back up, please.
Como fazer?
Só um segundo, senador. Eles estão colocando de novo os slides.
Sim. Uma redução da superfície de água em que houve uma perda de 15% dos nossos recursos hídricos ao longo das 3 décadas. Infelizmente, essa é a realidade de hoje. Em 30 anos, perdemos 15% da superfície de água do Pantanal. Aqui é possível ver o nível de desmatamento da região amazônica e o que ela interfere no Pantanal. Eu digo a vocês, na condição de médico, que a estiagem no Pantanal, a falta de chuvas no Pantanal, é uma consequência. A causa principal, ela vem do desmatamento da Amazônia. Todas as vezes em que ocorre, ano após ano, um desmatamento maior do que aquele do ano anterior, as consequências no bioma Pantanal serão sentidos no ano seguinte. Aqui, para vocês verem, mês a mês do ano de 2020, até agora, o nível de desmatamento do território amazônico. Isso equivale, na medicina, o seguinte: imaginem que vocês estão com um problema e vão até um consultório médico. o médico faz os exames e descobre a sua doença. A partir do momento que ela está descoberta, tem que propor um tratamento. Eu imagino que o diagnóstico dos problemas no Pantanal já estão descobertos. Nós precisamos, sim, a partir de então, propor um tratamento para evitar as consequências maiores no bioma do Pantanal. Aqui é uma imagem que demonstra que em 2024 atingimos o dobro do dado que tivemos em 2020. 2020 teve 26.725 até junho. Até junho desse ano já ultrapassou 408 mil. Aqui está dando para vocês observarem. Esse é um trabalho muito interessante para demonstrar aquilo que eu falei. A causa do problema está na Amazônia e a consequência dele vem para o Pantanal. Nós chamamos isso de rios voadores e a consequência da estiagem em função do desmatamento. O homem tenta, mas contra a natureza nós não podemos. E aqui estão algumas imagens da tentativa do combate do incêndio no Pantanal. Nós temos um organismo federal que chama-se IBAMA, que tem lá uma brigada contra os incêndios, Prev Fire. Nós temos os bombeiros e as brigadas que atuam diretamente no Pantanal. A tecnologia nos auxilia com maquinários, carros, aeronaves.
O objetivo aqui é realmente combater os focos de incêndio na região do Pantanal. Então, essa aeronave, K-790 Millennium, sediado em Anápolis, né, da Força Aérea Brasileira, ela tem essa capacidade, é a única aeronave da Força Aérea com essa capacidade de incêndio em voo. A gente tem uma capacidade de 12 mil litros, né, de água, e a gente consegue fazer essa dispersão dos focos de incêndio mais específicos. Né?
E o interior da aeronave, aqui os assentos e aqui o tanque, onde vai os milhares de litros de água para apagar os focos de incêndio.
Mais equipamentos, uma BTF, que é um caminhão de combate a incêndio florestal. Hoje chegou a ser da Força Aérea Brasileira, a primeira vez que vai ser usado aqui.
Aqui são os equipamentos que os brigadistas e os bombeiros usam, extremamente inferiores à velocidade que se propaga o fogo, e é uma época em que não se chove, tem muita vegetação das folhas secas e tem muito vento. Então, a partir do momento que se tem um foco de incêndio, ele se propaga numa velocidade praticamente impossível do ser humano acompanhar. Algumas tecnologias que lá se apresentam, um monitoramento de focos de fumaça, denominado Sistema Pantera. Eles têm 5 câmaras de monitoramento, com alcance de 35 quilômetros a 360 graus, e cobre uma área de 1.300.000 hectares. Funciona de dia e de noite. Essa é uma imagem que é o símbolo de tudo que a gente passou no incêndio de 2020. Do lado direito de vocês, na tela, é um ninho de uma ave símbolo do Pantanal que chama-se tuiuiu. Embaixo estava seco e pegou fogo. Os bombeiros foram rapidamente numa área mais segura, fizeram um outro ninho, transportaram os ovos desse ninho para aquele. E o milagre fez com que nascessem esses 3 filhotes, que acabou sendo um símbolo da interação e luta do ser humano para poder preservar a natureza, que indiscutivelmente é algo de Deus. Eu gostaria de agradecer e dizer que essa iniciativa da FAO merece todo o nosso apoio. O intercâmbio de experiências e de comunicação entre os países que fazem parte desse contexto e os outros que poderão vir será muito importante para que nós, no futuro, não tenhamos essas imagens apenas como uma lembrança. Nós temos que, cada um de nós, fazer a nossa parte. E é isso que eu me proponho. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigada, Senator Trad. Remembering Pantanal is the world's largest tropical wetland, and how all of this is connected from the Amazon into the lower parts of South America, and all of these sort of water, drought, fire relationships, that everything is connected. And this is what the Fire Hub intends to do, in fact, is to share these kinds of experiences, the different knowledge, the different best practices, and bring that together and try to tackle this issue of wildfires, again, before they start burning. So thank you so much to our first panel. I would like to, everybody give them a big round of applause. It's been a long week and they're still here with us. So thank you so much. Our esteemed speakers here can now take their seats in the audience. We will invite our second panel up, and this will be moderated by my colleague Lara Steil. She's FAO's Fire Management Officer, and focus on the importance of bridging technical and social innovation in integrated fire management. And we have another set of key partners for the Fire Hub who will be featured here. So thanks for sticking with us.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Amy, for handing over to me. And I'm super happy to facilitate this conversation on the importance of bridging technological and social innovation in integrated fire management. I would say that this is my thing in fire management. And a big thanks to our panelists here and the audience here in person, and also to the colleagues that are joining us online. Thank you all for gathering today to discuss a topic of immense importance, that is the traditional knowledge of fire management with scientific knowledge, especially in the face of the escalating challenges posed by climate change. The Fire Hub presented earlier today by the Forestry Deputy Director, Tina Vahanen, includes a pillar named Wildfire Resilient Communities. And this pillar aims to create equal and diverse wildfire resilient communities, working together with indigenous peoples and other local knowledge holders to build on traditional knowledge in a community-based approach to fire management. Traditional knowledge and the customary practices of fire management, often developed and refined over generations, have the potential to benefit environmental health. These practices are usually tailored to the specific ecological and cultural context of a region, offering valuable insights for maintaining and enhancing environmental health, promoting biodiversity, and reducing wildfire risks. However, with the accelerating impacts of climate change, our ecosystems are facing unprecedented threats. Rising temperatures, prolonged droughts, and unpredictable weather patterns are increasing the frequency and intensity of wildfires. It's here that the synergy between traditional knowledge and modern science becomes not just beneficial, but essential. By integrating traditional fire management techniques with contemporary scientific methods and knowledge, we can develop more effective strategies for wildfire prevention and ecosystem and community resilience. This collaboration enhances our ability to adapt to changing conditions, protect biodiversity, and safeguard communities. Yet, this integration is not without challenges. It requires mutual respect, trust building, and the inclusion of communities' voices in decision-making processes. Overcoming these obstacles involves recognizing the value of traditional knowledge and ensuring that communities are active partners in crafting fire management policies. In conclusion, connecting traditional knowledge and customary practices with scientific knowledge is a powerful step toward the sustainable and resilient landscapes. As we confront the realities of climate change, let us embrace this integrated approach to protect our environment and future generations, leaving no one behind. We will now have the interventions from each one of the speakers on how they see bridging traditional and scientific knowledge on fire in a more holistic approach. I just want to share with you that we had invited a distinguished representative of Indigenous peoples to this event, but unfortunately he was unable to attend due to an emergency. So for starting our conversation, I would like to invite our first panelist, Ms. Gabriela Saavedra. She is the chairperson for the Latin America and Caribbean Forestry Commission. And she is from the Ministry of Environment in Ecuador. And so I asked Gabriela to share with us the experience of projects such as Amazon Without Fire, which focus on integrated fire management in your country, Gabriela. Gabriela will speak in Spanish, so if you need interpretation, you can use your headsets. Over to you, Gabriela.
Muchísimas gracias, Lara. Muchísimas gracias a los panelistas también por acompañarnos. Gracias a los asistentes y especialmente quiero agradecer la asistencia de nuestro embajador de Ecuador, Esteban Moscoso. Muchísimas gracias por su presencia y por su apoyo realmente durante toda esta semana de trabajo. Muchísimas gracias. Sí, bueno, nosotros queríamos conversar sobre esta integración que ya vemos con los conocimientos ancestrales que existen, que han existido desde hace muchísimos años en este manejo integral del fuego y cómo ahora tiene que interrelacionarse con el cambio climático y lo que queremos hacer en el manejo integral del fuego. En el contexto del, En el contexto del cambio climático, la integración de las prácticas y conocimientos de los pueblos indígenas y otras comunidades tradicionales en el manejo del fuego y la ciencia se revela como una estrategia vital para la sostenibilidad y la resiliencia de nuestros ecosistemas. Estos conocimientos ancestrales acumulados durante generaciones no solo ofrecen una comprensión profunda de los ecosistemas locales y sus dinámicas, sino que también aportan prácticas adaptadas a las realidades ambientales específicas de cada región. Los pueblos indígenas han utilizado el fuego controlado para manejar la vegetación, reducir la acumulación de combustible y prevenir incendios descontrolados. Tenemos registros de estos conocimientos aplicados en las comunidades de la Amazonía en Brasil, en la Gran Sabana venezolana y, por supuesto, en las zonas altoandinas del Ecuador. Estas prácticas, conocidas como quemas prescritas, pueden ser complementadas con datos científicos sobre el clima y el comportamiento del fuego, como así poder mejorar su efectividad. Se conoce que en las latitudes altas es vital el manejo integral del fuego para la salud del ecosistema. Se liberan nutrientes y se logra propagar semillas. La integración de estos conocimientos tradicionales no solo enriquece las estrategias de manejo integral del fuego, sino que también promueve una mayor equidad y colaboración entre las comunidades locales y los gestores ambientales. Enfrentar el cambio climático no requiere un enfoque holístico, un enfoque holístico que reconozca y valore la sabiduría de aquellos que han vivido y gestionado estos ecosistemas durante siglos. La colaboración entre la ciencia moderna y el conocimiento tradicional emerge como una solución poderosa para construir un futuro más sostenible y resiliente para todos. Como mencionaba Lara, en Ecuador tenemos el programa Amazonía sin Fuego. Es un programa símbolo de cómo estamos tratando de gestionar el manejo integral del fuego. Este programa, que funciona a través del Ministerio del Ambiente, reconoce el papel crucial que juegan las comunidades locales en la prevención y mitigación de incendios forestales. Está instaurado ya desde el reglamento del Código Orgánico del Ambiente, está dentro de nuestra normativa con la gestión integrada de manejo del fuego y desde el 2019 se ha venido trabajando en la integración de este programa. Sin embargo, siempre persiste el desafío de superar una visión centrada exclusivamente en la supresión de los incendios. El programa Amazonía sin Fuego trabaja en estrecha colaboración con las comunidades para desarrollar estrategias que combinen técnicas modernas con prácticas tradicionales, fortaleciendo así la capacidad local para gestionar el fuego de manera sostenible. El manejo integral del fuego también es un trabajo que debemos realizarlo de manera articulada. Nos hemos organizado también con otros países, especialmente los 8 países de la región amazónica que compartimos este bioma amazónico, y hemos trabajado en la conformación de una red amazónica integral del fuego, conocida como la RAMIF. Es un mecanismo que está en implementación en el marco de la ODCA y empezó esta integración desde diciembre del 2023. La consolidamos como una plataforma clave para promover un enfoque inclusivo en el manejo del fuego. Esta red integral amazónica tiene como objetivo facilitar este intercambio de experiencias y conocimientos entre países amazónicos y más allá, subrayando la importancia de integrar las prácticas tradicionales en las estrategias modernas. Países miembros como Brasil, por ejemplo, han demostrado que al incorporar estos saberes ancestrales en las políticas y estrategias contemporáneas es posible desarrollar enfoques más efectivos y adaptativos para enfrentar los desafíos del cambio climático. Me gustaría señalar que a partir desde junio del 2024, Ecuador asumió la presidencia de esta red y estamos trabajando para el periodo 2024-2026. Este rol representa un desafío significativo para nuestro país, ya que implica fomentar en los 8 países y entre estos 8 países, la integración de prácticas y conocimientos tradicionales sobre el manejo del fuego. Necesitamos incluir los enfoques científicos y la innovación que se está dando en este escenario de cambio climático. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a ti, Gabriela, por compartir con nosotros toda la experiencia de Latinoamérica y también de Ecuador, que es un país que tiene realmente una posición de liderazgo en América Latina. Muy contenta de tenerte acá. Gracias. Now I hand over to Mr. Johan Goldamer, the Executive Director of the Global Fire Monitoring Center, a key partner for us with the Fire Hub. And Johan, you recently worked with a publication of Tropenbos called Towards Fire Smart Landscapes. And what can you share with us today on this topic of integration of knowledge in connection with this interesting publication and all the work that the GFMC has been done over the so many years? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Lara. Thanks for FAO inviting me to be on the panel. Yes, indeed. 2 years ago, I cooperated with the Dutch NGO Tropenbos to compile a volume on fire resilient or fire smart landscapes. And the overall idea of this approach was to look at the expertise of indigenous people and other local knowledge holders throughout the tropical world, and to see how they have traditionally been dealing with the issue of fire. And the outcomes of this work, which covered tropical Africa, Asia, Latin America, was quite revealing. The experience of the before mentioned groups in living with fire, in shaping or creating fire resilient environments, because this expertise of people on the one side being threatened by wildfires, on the other side using fire as a cultural tool is enormous. And we also can see that in the last 2 to 3 decades of international cooperation, which was, among other, very much supported by the FAO over the last years, that building and intensifying community-based work in fire management has shown remarkable results. And concluding from what we compiled in this volume on fire smart landscapes, by the way, it is available on the internet and available in English and in Spanish, is that we can learn a lot, including here in the global north. Because these approaches that have been also mentioned in the first panel this morning, to focus more on the prevention of fires through appropriate land management, through landscape management, indeed is what we are needing to aim for. And I think that the expertise gained by the many in tropical Africa, Asia and Latin America can also be transferred to a region of the world where the climate is now rapidly changing and creating very similar framing conditions and also constraints to the environment. So concluding from this exercise, I think one of the major lessons identified may turn to lessons learned. In other words, to utilize and to transfer this knowledge from the global south to the global north, to our landscapes in the northern hemisphere that are increasingly threatened by climate change and socio-economic developments. And as we had heard in the first panel, and I just want to refer to the chief of the US Forest Service, who pointed out that in North America and the United States, the focus will be shifted towards proactive land management to reduce the wildfire threat. So in conclusion, we can learn from this expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us today, Johan. And now I want to invite Ms. Jennifer Conge, Director of the Forestry Management Division of the International Tropical Timber Organization, ITTO, to share with us her perspective on this topic, considering the Tropical Forest Fire Expert Group meeting held yesterday here during COFO. And this workshop was held to discuss and to update the ITTO guidelines for fire management in tropical forests. And so, Jennifer, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. ITTO has long recognized that fire is a serious threat and concern in the tropics. The management of fire has specific challenges in the tropics, including, for example, complex land ownership patterns and governance, limited resources and capacities, and, as pointed out, the use of fire as a long-standing cheap tool for land preparation and clearing for farming and ranching activities. So ITTO is not only a policy forum, it's also a project-oriented forum. And for over 3 decades, ITTO has helped build members' capacities on different aspects of fire management, including wildfire monitoring systems, risk assessments, post-fire rehabilitation, and community and institutional capacity building. And what we've learned is that in all these projects, the understanding that sustainable solutions requires a landscape look at fire risk and landscape use of land, and that it is imperative to have the active participation of the community. A recent example is an ITTO project in Peru implemented by SUR4. This project built the capacities and coordination of local community leaders, indigenous leaders, and local authorities in 4 different provinces. And they worked with the Ministry of Culture in Peru to implement an intercultural strategy to prevent fire on the landscape. So these are the type of projects that ITTO is working very closely with members on to help build that connection between communities and local and national authorities. One of the main lessons we learned from these projects is that it's imperative to engage social scientists. Biological and physical scientists are wonderful at what you do. You're experts in the science, but social scientists know how to build trust with the communities. They understand the historical context in how these communities operate and how they work, and they know how to build trust and communicate the message that sometimes does not come as clearly through biological and physical scientists. ITTO was one of the first earliest responders to the issue of fire. Back in 1997, as was pointed out by Lara, we developed the first international guidelines on fire with the assistance of Dr. Goldenheimer. And these guidelines were instrumental in helping member states like Ghana and Indonesia to develop their national strategies on fire management and prevention. So 25 years later, ITTO is going to revise those guidelines. And just yesterday, there was a meeting held here in collaboration with FAO. Many of the experts who participated in that meeting are in the audience. And the intent is to update those guidelines to incorporate the latest thinking on fire management and strategies, research on fire behavior, and also make them a little bit relevant contextually to the tropics. It was an all-day meeting, and one of the principles in those guidelines is a principle on social and economic engagement, particularly of communities. And it was an interesting discussion because there's a recognition that, of course, without incorporating the indigenous people and local communities' knowledge, we're missing a piece. And not only are we missing a piece, without incorporating how they use the landscape and getting their buy-in, we risk losing their collaboration when implementing national fire strategies and prevention strategies. At the same time, there was also recognition that there are limitations to traditional knowledge and there are limitations to Western science-based knowledge. we are dealing with unprecedented environmental change. And I know people are sick of hearing the word unprecedented, but it really is true. And so there's an understanding that it takes open-mindedness on both sides, open-mindedness from the Western science-based thinking that predictions made through traditional knowledge may not have the data sets they're looking for, but they should be considered when they're doing their fire predictions and modeling and behavior. And there's also recognition that some of these landscapes have changed beyond what they used to look like, from centuries, and that modifications of how these communities use fires culturally may need to change as well. So it's not a matter of picking one methodology over another. It's a matter of combining both of them together and making sure that we find resilient and sustainable solutions combining both thoughts of knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing with us your thoughts. And now, over to Ms. Elizabeth Seawood. She is the Senior Program Manager, Environmental Security of the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. UNEP is also our first partner for the Fire Hub. So, welcome. And UNEP in 2022 published the document Spreading Like Wildfires, and which in this document we can see references to the integration of knowledge from traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. So Lizzie, could you explore this topic from UNEP's perspective? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Laura. And UNEP is very pleased to be a partner in this very important initiative. So thanks for inviting me. So to answer your question, just to note before I start that this morning I was listening to the Premier of Alberta on the BBC News, who was audibly very upset by what's happening in Jasper. The huge fires there. And I think it's so important to note that the people who care about these ecosystems the most are the people who live there. And the damage that is being done by fires is very deep. It's damage to people, it's damage to precious landscapes, precious trees. And so in order to find good solutions, those are the people who are going to work hardest and are so bought into these landscapes. Earlier this week, I was in Lebanon. Shadi was, who's at the back there, was helpful in organizing our visit to northern Lebanon, to Akkar, where we were talking to local communities, local cooperatives about how they've responded to massive fires in that area, and how they're using local organizations and volunteers to watch over the forest, particularly during the nighttime, to catch fires when they occur, but also what they're doing locally to reduce fuel through grazing, through, again, very local initiatives to thin the forest and reduce the fuel. It's very obvious that in those kinds of areas, it's a lot of the work is voluntary, and a lot of it relies on traditional practices, reviving and reinforcing traditional practices. And those are the people who know the landscape best and who know what's going to work in terms of reducing the risks. I think working with local communities is also absolutely essential in terms of the sustainability of our interventions. UNEP works very much on science, and we like to use technology tools to understand risks and look for solutions. But in order to make sure that those solutions are going to stay in place and continue to be implemented, we need to understand what's going to continue to work after we've gone home, and that absolutely depends on working with the people who are going to continue to thin the forest, graze the animals, and basically work on the businesses or the practices, the agricultural practices that will reduce fire risks in those areas. So I think from a sustainability perspective, it's essential to work with local and indigenous communities. Lara, you mentioned the Spreading Like Wildfire report. There's quite a lot in that report about the role of indigenous and local knowledge. One of the points that the scientists that authored that report make is that there is limited documentation on the role of indigenous groups in managing wildfires, but I think it's growing, as colleagues have noted. The report notes from oral histories and science that indigenous people are actively engaged in landscape burning, developing, creating mosaic landscapes. There are examples in the report from Venezuela, from Brazil, and from Australia. And there are also some examples in the report about how traditional practices have been woven into national or regional plans for integrated fire management. Again, Brazil, Guyana, Venezuela are mentioned. So lots to build on, but I think the key message is we have to use the science, but we also need to incorporate local indigenous knowledge, without which we will not succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, for your remarks. And we have reached the end of our session today. And I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists and the speakers and all the audience. And over to Amy. Thank you.
No, thanks so much. And we've just been told that the interpretation has ended, so we do end the event here. Thanks to all again, and a special thanks to the U.S. Agency of International Development for the new contribution. This will really enhance the work. But thank you to all for the great knowledge exchange today. We look forward to continuing the great work of the Fire Hub. Big applause. And if those speakers can stay for a quick photo with our Director of the Forestry Division, and then we will have to move to plenary very quickly for the closing of COFO. Thank you.